Hello, I'm Oliver Colling, and this is my 70s TV childhood. Hello, and welcome back to my 70s TV childhood. It's lovely to have you with us again. This is a podcast where we take a gentle wander down memory lane, back to what it was like growing up in Britain during the 1970s. A time when television wasn't just something we watched, it was a big part of our lives and our families. We might be one of the few podcasts out there with such a special focus, but that just makes what we do even more enjoyable. I'm so pleased you've joined us, and if you're new to the show, a very warm welcome. There's plenty to explore in our back catalogue. We're now over 6 seasons in, with almost 180 episodes for you to enjoy. Not bad for something which I started doing hoping that I wasn't the only one who looked back fondly to my 70s childhood. What really keeps the show going though is you, our wonderful listeners. You're such an engaged and thoughtful group, and it means a lot when you take the time to get in touch. Our recent All Creatures Great and Small episode was a great example. I loved hearing all of your memories, and the episode certainly brought back lots of happy times for many of you. In particular, our Facebook post on the episode went down very well. We had over 2,500 likes and dozens of comments from you. Most of them were similar in nature, saying how much listeners enjoyed the original TV show, and by a margin of about 10 to 1 you seem to prefer it to the remake currently running on Channel 5. Typical of your comments was this from John. Superb viewing. I've lost count of how many times I've watched this well-made classic TV programme. I also like this one from Maria. After wanting one for 50 years, I now have my own tricky woo. My darling Pekingese, Miss Mimi, the most beautiful, loving rescue dog. Oh, that's lovely, Maria. There was quite a bit of hostility from some of you for the recent remake, which I thought was a little harsh, but generally the old show came out well on top. Thank you to everyone who reached out. Even if I haven't mentioned your comment, please believe me, it's been read and much appreciated. If you'd like to join the conversation on anything we've featured in the podcast or things you'd like to see in future episodes, there are lots of ways to do just that. You can leave a note on our blog at www.my70stvchildhood.com. You can find us on Facebook, Twitter/X, YouTube or LinkedIn, or you can simply drop me an email to oliver@my70stvchildhood.com. And yes, before I forget, of course, we are now on Instagram, so watch out for our content if you're on Insta. Who says we aren't cool and down with the kids, eh? So, make yourself comfortable and let's take another warm and wonderful look back at life and TV in the 1970s. And today I've been down in the vaults of my 70s TV childhood towers to dig out the radio and TV times for October 1979. And a quick reminder for our younger listeners that in the 1970s, we had to buy 2 separate magazines for TV listings, the Radio Times for BBC TV and Radio, and the TV Times for ITV. Why? I have absolutely no idea, but it was yet another one of those things that we didn't question then, like why was it cheaper to use the telephone after 6 p.m, when surely the infrastructure and whatever and the costs were exactly the same? And why was it that we had to take our holiday snaps to the chemist to get them developed? Just another one of history's great mysteries. Anyway, here I am with the magazines, which are a bit dusty from the archives. Just blow some of the dust off there. So what can I find? I'm going to take a look and see what was on the telly on the 21st of October 1979. And this is the date this podcast is scheduled to be released. Well, first off, it's a Sunday, so there may be some peaks and troughs on what's on offer for us. So what were you doing on Sunday the 21st of October 1979? I can't remember exactly, but I would have been in my second year in secondary school, which I do remember as being quite a good one. I got over the initial shock of the first year when you make that transition to big school and suddenly you're surrounded by what appear to be almost fully formed adults rather than bigger children. Boys who clearly need to shave every day and girls who are trying to make themselves look like they're 20 years old. And in that second year as well, you also stop being the new kids, the lowest of the low as far as some of the older people saw it, and you can enjoy the new kids making all of the same mistakes that you had a year earlier. So what were we watching on that Sunday? Now, to countenance the BBC bias I'm sometimes accused of by listeners, I'm going to start with the TV Times, and immediately there is something very interesting to note. It says in here, ITV programmes are limited and subject to change due to the ongoing strike by ITV technicians. This strike would end on the 24th of October, but it does look like there's a bit of a makeshift schedule in place. Let's have a look. Well, it looks as if programmes didn't begin until later in the day, due to the strike presumably, but we do have one of my favourites at 2:30 p.m.
It's the Muppet Show with our very special guest star, Raquel Welch. Woo! Yeah!
It's time to play the music. It's time to light the light. It's time to meet the Muppets on the Muppet Show tonight.
It's time to put on makeup. It's time to dress up right. It's time to get things started. Why don't you get things started?
Get things started on the most
Sensational, inspirational, celebrational, motivational. This is what we call a Muppet Show.
As regular listeners will know, I do have a soft spot for the Muppets. And the first episode of a new series is what's on today, and according to the TV Times, we've got Dudley Moore as the guest star. Presumably he's doing more of the classical pianist and Hollywood film star routine, rather than Pete and Dud or Derek and Clive. Now, I may be wrong, but I would wager that Peter Cook never made it onto the Muppet Show with Kermit and Co. Can you imagine what might have happened if he had? So, with a smile on my face after the Muppets, what's next? Oh, at 3 p.m. we have Quatermass with John Mills. Now, I do remember that. It's episode 1 of 4 called Ringstone Road. Yeah, I remember Quatermass comes out of retirement to investigate some very strange interplanetary goings-on. And he's faced with a cult who think they're being transported to a better place, where most of us could see it's pretty obvious they're being just annihilated by some laser-type death ray. It was quite sinister and a bit scary, so I'm quite surprised it was on a Sunday afternoon. What's next? After Quatermass, we have Spencer's Pilots. US show about, well, pilots who work for a man called Spencer Parrish. This episode is called The Crop Duster, but other than that I don't have much to go on. Sounds like just the kind of show I would have enjoyed as a 12-year-old, but I have no memory of it. I'm sure some of our listeners have better memories than I do, so do let us know if you remember the show. Okay. After a bit of news and weather, we seem to be back into that makeshift schedule with an episode of the US sitcom Alice at 7 p.m. Now, I remember that show and being rather mystified by it. It was set in a diner, the whole concept of which was pretty alien to us in Warrington at the time, as it was to most people in the UK. I also remember that for a sitcom it didn't raise much of a smile. Apologies to any fans of the show listening, but perhaps I should try and find a few episodes and watch it again and see if it stood the test of time. We've then got another sitcom, a show called 8 is Enough, which is, yes, you guessed it, another US sitcom about a family with 8 children. Once again, I have absolutely no idea about this one. Presumably due to the strike, there weren't any homegrown programmes available apart from Quatermass, which was a big budget show and presumably been made quite some time earlier. And, well, finally on Granada at 9 p.m, we have Marciano, a biopic of boxer Rocky Marciano, starring Tony Lobianco as the great man. No offence, Tony, but your made-for-TV movie brings a pretty dire day of ITV programme to an end without much of a knockout finish. So how about I lay down my TV times and have a look at the radio times, which is reassuringly much thicker, and let's see what's happening on BBC One and BBC Two. Can't be as bad as ITV, or can it? Right, let's have a look. Right, we begin on BBC One 8:55 with Bod, which I still maintain was produced by someone on something. Then we've got Wake Up Sunday with Dana telling religious stories and singing songs, which sounds like good, clean Sunday morning programming. And then we're on to a series of community and educational shows with the Asian show Nai Zindagi Naya Jeevan at 9:30, and at 10 a.m. we have Your Own Business, a show aimed at small business owners. All very entrepreneurial, in fact. Oh, actually, according to the Radio Times, you can send in a large stamped addressed envelope to get some resources and advice, which is very helpful indeed. At 10:25, we have Let's Go, presented by Brian Ricks, who unfortunately isn't running in and out of wardrobes with his trousers falling down, but presenting a show for what the Radio Times called the mentally handicapped. That's interesting, isn't it? I think it shows over time we become a lot more accommodating of disabilities and disabled people, that the use of that term seems like something prehistoric. I'm intrigued by what's on at 10:40, which is a programme called Roadshow Disco from Scamps in Bradford, featuring Linda Lewis and the Love Machine. There's no other information, so I'd love to know more about the show and also about Scamps in Bradford, which sounds like a classic disreputable nightclub. I'm also a bit puzzled that it's sandwiched between the community and educational slots, as we have Télé France at 11:05 and Aventura at 11:30, helping us to learn French and Italian, respectively. Télé France is presented by Georges Brassens and features songs by Georges Brassens too. The episode is called Le Pain et le Vin and features French eating and drinking habits as reflected in the making of bread, the serving of wine, and the cooking of a pot-au-feu, which is very sophisticated for 1979, when most of us are still living off meat and 2 veg generally. Aventura looks a bit more like a normal language course, and the Radio Times very helpfully tells us that the accompanying book is available for £2.50 from all good booksellers, and the double album or cassette of lessons is available at £11. That seems quite a lot of money for 1979. Moving on, if languages aren't your thing, then we have Make Your Own Furniture at 11:55, which looks exciting as it features how to make an occasional table. Oh, and there's also a book available to accompany the series at £7.50 this time. I've always wondered what an occasional table is. Does it mean it's occasionally a table whilst being something else, like a magazine rack for the rest of the time? Could somebody let me know? And as it's Sunday, we've got more religion at 12:20 with This Above All, featuring the Christian Experience. And then at 1 p.m, we get the farming programme, which I'm sure is avidly viewed by the farming community across the country, whilst everyone else sits down for Sunday lunch. And before the news at 2 p.m, we have a 15-minute programme called Right Away, which helps adults with literacy problems. And yes, you can send a large stamped addressed envelope to the BBC for more information. Now, I may be imagining it, but there does seem to be much more community and helpful programming on the BBC than there seems to be now. It really does seem like true public service broadcasting. Anyway, but enough of the worthy stuff. What comes next? Oh, this is Sunday afternoon film after the news, and it's a corker. John Mills, again, he's doing very well today, starring in Scott of the Antarctic. What a perfect way to relax after Sunday lunch. I can just imagine watching it with my father snoozing in an armchair and my mother doing the washing up in the kitchen. And then after the ultimately doomed Scott's heroics, we've got the Metropolitan Police tattoo at 3:50. I never knew there was such a thing. But this spectacular extravaganza is to celebrate the Met 150th anniversary. Well, congratulations to all at the Met. And at 4:30, we have another old favourite.
Hey, Shep, do you remember we passed here a few years ago? It was when we started on the trip with Nellie, the car. Yes, we were heading up the Dales, looking for potholes, quoits, and wooden mice. Oh, it was a grand summer, was that? And it was all your idea, wasn't it? Best idea you ever had.
John Noakes and Shep made a great team, and it wasn't surprising that they got their own show away from the confines of Blue Peter. I remember the pair travelling around an old Morris Minor, but today's episode is the first one where they're on board a boat. The Pleiades, not sure if I pronounced that correctly, which travellings around the British coast, with the first episode being Southampton to Penzance. It's funny what you do and don't remember, so I remember the Morris Minor, but I don't remember the boat. So, after a pleasurable half hour with John and Shep, we have the final of Rising Stars, a talent show presented by the poor man's Bob Monkhouse, Lenny Bennett. Once again, maybe fortunately, this show seems to have passed me by. After the news with Angela Rippon, we have an appeal by Nationwide presenter Michael Barrett for a charity supporting disabled young people. And the Radio Times asks us to send a cross-check or postal order to the appeal address. Do you know, I don't know the last time I used a cheque, and I haven't seen a postal order for decades. Do they still exist? Michael then hosts Songs of Praise from Winchester Cathedral, no less. Very nice. And then we have Roots at 7:15. Yes, Roots was an amazing TV show. This is the second series, Roots The Next Generation, but I think it's hard to underestimate the impact it had in 1970s Britain. We had never seen such a realistic portrayal of black American life, and it was moving, emotional and gripping. I do think we need to look at this show in another episode of this podcast, because if we look at the wider Roots phenomenon, I think there's a lot of things that we can learn, and I know several listeners have mentioned this previously, so watch this space. Even though Alex Haley's claims that all of the story was true have since been discredited, it is still a powerful television event. Following Roots, we have part 4 of a new sitcom, To the Manor Born. And this show is another one which became hugely popular, and its finale is still one of the most watched Christmas Day shows in UK history. Penelope Keith played Audrey Forbes Hamilton, dealing with the suave but low-born Richard de Vere, played by Peter Bowles, as he took over her former manor house. It was a great double act and a true classic. And if that weren't enough, at 9:15 we have an episode of Shoestring. Where Trevor Eves' Eddie Shoestring gets into trouble looking for a missing aerial photographer. Sounds intriguing, and just a thing for a Sunday evening. Right, after the news, at which point I'm sure I would have departed for bed, there are a few rather serious documentary programmes before we sign off with the national anthem about midnight. Well, in my book, that's a clear win for BBC One on this Sunday, but I do feel for ITV after their strike. Oh, we haven't even looked at BBC Two yet. Give me a moment and I will see what highlights we have there. Okay. Right, well, most of the morning is given up to the Open University. And then we have a show at 1:45 called The World of Rugby, presented by Cliff Morgan and Carwyn James. That sounds interesting. Oh, and there is a book available, the Radio Times tells us, at £6.50. Seems to be a bit of a common theme here between the Radio Times, what's on BBC TV and retail. At 2:10, there's a show called Seeing Through Drawing, which is 2 hours of looking how various artists, including David Hockney, draw. The book is £8.50, by the way. And then at 4:10, there's more rugby. That theme tune takes me back. And today we have the Schweppes SRU Championship with Hoyk against Heriots, introduced by Nigel Starmer-Smith. After a reign of 5 years as Scottish League champions, Hoyk lost the title last season to Heriots. The Edinburgh side are led again by Andy Irvine, and Hoyk are captained by the Scottish hooker Colin Deans. Commentator is Bill McLaren. How exciting! International snooker follows with the Team World Challenge Cup, whatever that was. And then we have an evening of serious programmes, starting with the Money programme with Valerie Singleton, no less. What have we got? We've got another show about art. Oh, and then we have Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy with Alec Guinness at 10:20. What a drama that was. Although I didn't watch it until many years later, I'm not sure my 12-year-old self would have appreciated as much as my later teenage self did. Then we've got some more snooker. Then to the close is a film from 1965, Harvey Middleman, Fireman. No, me neither. So there we are. A little bit of something for everyone across BBC One and BBC Two on Sunday the 21st of October 1979. And I'll remind you that's a mere 36 years ago. I have to say, the BBC schedule was better than I might have thought, and I think it's unfair to compare to ITV's strike-stricken scheduling. Sundays were generally a bit lame, I remember, as a child, but looking back to 1979 suggests I may have been mistaken. I could well imagine spending several hours in front of the TV based on these schedules. And do you know what? I probably did. Can you help with some of my missing memories? Do you remember Spencer's Pilots or 80s Enough? Or can you fill me in on Scamp's nightclub in Bradford? If you can, then do get in touch by the methods outlined earlier. Well, that is all we have time for. I do hope you've enjoyed going back to October 1979, and if you like what you hear, please tell your friends. And don't forget to like, rate and review us wherever you get your podcasts. We will be back next week with our regular 70s TV trivia quiz, and in a fortnight with our next regular podcast. Until then, take care, look after those you love, and join us again soon for more from my 70s TV childhood.